Well, welcome to the latest nowRail update, and today I'm going to be talking about sensors. Sensors are a new item that has just been added to version 0.6, so I'm going to explain in this video how they work. So before you even start, if you're going to use nowRail, you need to nip over to the Digital Town site and go to the nowRail page and just go to the downloads. And as you can see, the latest version is 0.6, and in this version I've integrated sensors and a JMRI integration. Now, some people would think that sensors and JMRI are the same subject, but they're not. nowRail treats sensors as a separate item, and JMRI is just one of the outputs that is available for sensor data. Now, going over to the webcam, as you can see, I have a pretty busy breadboard. So the way this works, we have an ESP32 node over here. This is just running as a monitor so that I can see the traffic on the network. I have another ESP32 that is directly connected to JMRI. I've got another ESP32. This one is connected to a CD4021 shift register down here, and that in turn is connected to two IR sensors. Then in the center I've got yet another ESP32. This one is connected to these three IR sensors, but at the same time this is running some other sensors. It's just generating extra sensor traffic on a timer. So let's have a look at how this is all set up. So this is the latest version of nowRail. Now you'll see on the bottom of the screen here, you can see that some sensors are being triggered at the moment. This is because, going back to the webcam, this particular ESP32 is just sending out some timed sensor events just to add more traffic onto the system. So coming back to nowRail, the way this is displayed is quite simple. I just go up to custom functions, and right at the, if you like, the bottom of the list of custom functions is a particular function here, now sensor update. It receives the sensor number and the instruction, a 0 or 1, and all it's doing is serial printing this information out to the serial monitor. The reason for having this function in here is, although I've got sensor data being sent to JMRI, my layout doesn't use JMRI. So if I want to use some sensors to do certain things, I will write my custom code within this function to trigger whatever I want to trigger. So as you can see, the output system is quite simple. Now I'm going to show you how I've actually set up these different sensor events. So the first system we're going to look at is running on this center board. Now this is running two types of sensors. I've got the three IR sensors here, but also it's running timed events, and the timed events are an event that uses a custom function that allows you to trigger a sensor using a method that I haven't thought about. I'm using time, but the reason these functions are in there is to allow users to do things that I just couldn't dream up as a standard idea. So going back to the Digital Town site, we just go to the link standard pin functions, and these are functions that are used when the sensor or button or the output is connected directly to an ESP32 pin. So going down to the bottom of these, we've got the new area here, add standard pin sensor, and all you pass it is a pin number and a sensor number. It is literally as simple as that. So going back to the new nowRail 0.6, Dropping down, I've got a few variables here that are to do with a timer for those timed events. Those are nothing to do with these sensors that I'm about to show you. So the lines of code that I've put in, I have a sensor that is attached to pin 15, and it is triggering sensor with an ID of 30. Pin 19 is attached to sensor 26, and pin 2 triggers sensor 27. It is literally as simple as that. So bringing up the webcam, just by adding those 3 lines of code, if I now start to put my hands over the different sensors, you can see on the serial monitor the different sensors triggering. And you can see that there is 30, 26 and 27. Apologies for number 44 and 43. That is actually these 2 sensors here that were getting triggered by my hand. Now, as I have JMRI connected to the system, I just thought I'd bring up the JMRI sensor window. Now, again, we are looking at, was it 30, 26 and 27? So 30 is active, 26, 27. Again, as I put my hand over the different sensors, you will see them going active and inactive. So when it comes to adding a standard sensor, if you like, a standard pin sensor, that is a sensor attached directly to the ESP32 pin, it is as simple as adding 1 line of code. Everything else is taken care of internally within nowRail. Now, the next type of sensor that we're going to look at is a custom sensor. Now, a custom sensor is a sensor that might not use a standard digital on-off type signal. It could be using some kind of analog sensor, something that I can't think about. So what I have created my own custom function that is running. And if we go into custom functions, it's my time events. Now, this has a timer on it, and it is running, I think, every 1 second or something. That's it, every 1 second. I use this function a lot when I'm testing nowRail because it allows me to create lots and lots of events at timed intervals, and I can keep my eye on the output while not having to press lots of buttons. So if you like, the custom function, it calls this function here send sensor update. And again, it just gives the sensor number and the value that needs to be sent. So this could be triggered by your own custom code. I'm using time, so at 5 seconds past the minute, it sends this instruction. 10 seconds past, 15 seconds past, 20 seconds past. At 25 seconds past, it's sending 2 instructions. This was just for me to create some traffic within the network. And as you can see, by running that code, I'm just seeing every few seconds that I get a sensor update coming through. And again, if I bring over the JMRI sensors, hopefully we'll be able to see some going active and inactive. Now, the final sensor input that we're going to look at today is this one on the CD4021 shift register chip. The reason I've added these into nowRail is that the ESP32 has got a limited number of pins, and if you want to add a lot of sensors and buttons onto one ESP32, the shift register is a very cheap way of adding more pins. Now, making your way back to the nowRail page on the Digital Town website, you just need to drop down to CD4021 shift register pin functions. That will then bring you down to the circuit diagram. Now, there are 3 connections between the shift register and the ESP32. As you can see, it's the blue, the orange and the white. Now these chips can be daisy chained, so in the daisy chain system, chip 0 is the one nearest to the ESP32, then obviously chip 1, chip 2. We then have our pins. I've numbered them on this chip just to make it easier. So pin 0 is here, then we go up onto the top of the chip for pin 1, 2 and 3, and coming back down 4, 5, 6, 7. So each chip adds an extra 8 pins to your ESP32. Now to connect the sensor, and in this diagram obviously there is a button, but you would replace that with your sensor. You probably won't need the pull down resistor if you're using a sensor module. However, obviously if you're building your own module, you may need that. I'll leave that up to you. One thing to note, this is powered by 3.3 volts. If you are using a lot of these chips, because these chips are super cheap, you might add 5, 6 chips if you wanted a lot of sensors in one area. Just be aware that obviously the ESP32 is not able to supply an endless amount of 3.3 volts. It just doesn't give enough amps. So if you're going to use a lot of these with a lot of buttons or a lot of sensors, then you are going to need a separate 3.3 volt power supply. So you would put the 3.3 volt in here, remove the 3.3 volt from the ESP32, and obviously make sure all the grounds are connected. Moving further down, we're going to come to the function that we're actually going to use, and it is the add CD4021 pin sensor. Now it takes 3 variables. It takes a chip number, the pin number, and the sensor number. So it's literally which of these chips. In my case, I've only got chip 0, which of the pins 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then add a sensor number, whatever your sensor would be. And there are some examples here down at the bottom. In this case, I've got chip 0, pin 0, sensor 44, and then we've got chip 0, pin 1, sensor 43. It's as simple as that. So coming back to nowRail, once again, everything happens within the setup. The first thing is I add the my layout setup CD4021, and this basically gives the 3 pins that the shift register chip is connected to on the ESP32. Again, if you go into the nowRail site, it gives you some instructions on how to do that. And then I've added my 2 sensors. They are both on chip 0. The first is on pin 0, the second is on pin 1, and they are 44 and 43. So bringing up the camera and the serial monitor once again, if I just move my hand over those sensors, you can see that 44 and 43 are triggered as I move my hands across them. And once again, it's as simple as that to add sensors into the nowRail system. So that's how sensors are set up and used within nowRail. Now, obviously I'm at 0.6. If someone sees anything that they think would improve the sensor system, please let me know and I'll see what can be done. I'm now going to do a separate video on integrating JMRI, because JMRI is not just about sensors, it's also about receiving turnout and light commands. So I'll do that in a separate video. So I hope that's been useful to you, and if it is, please like and subscribe.